Have you ever met someone you could talk to forever? Today's guest is someone I was blessed to meet many, many years ago on retreat. We can talk about anything: writing, art, history, marketing, woo-woo, social media, hiking, family, motherhood, and of course, travel. But today she is sharing her experiences with psychedelics. Let's get into it. Hello, dreamers, believers, and bucket list retreaters. Welcome back to the Bucket List Retreats podcast. I'm your hostess, Kelly Morgan Murley. And if you are new here, we want to welcome you in. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today, we are jumping on the topic of sacred medicinals, psychedelics, psilocybin, and other medicines that you might be interested in talking about. They are out in the mainstream now.
Ayahuasca.
No interest.
No.
Yeah. Have you?
No.
Yeah.
That one feels like the combo of, I always feel like there's a white bucket around that people are puking in. And I'm
Yeah.
always like, first of all, I don't know, decorate the bucket. Trained horses?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. You prove my point that I feel like women and young girls that like horses usually have great hair.
Wow.
Always. I don't know. I have a bunch of theories. And one of them is that if you like horses, it makes your hair grow really thick.
Oh my God.
Because
you know what? A friend of
think
mine,
about all your-
every time she's on mushrooms, thinks that I look like My Little Pony.
You have fantastic.
This is for you, Rachel. This is for you,
Are you
Rach.
rolling
I hope
right
you're
now?
on
Because your
mushrooms.
mind is going to.
It seems like everyone is talking about it. And if you are in the retreat world, a lot of those type of retreats are happening. And maybe you're curious and want to know more about it. So today on the podcast, my longtime dear friend, Karen Talavera, the accidental seeker. I can't wait for you all to meet her. We laugh because we can talk about so many different things. As a matter of fact, after the podcast, we stayed on and talked and talked and talked because she is such an interesting person. In today's podcast, she's going to talk about her knowledge on psychedelics, her path to psychedelics, and how they have helped her. And I am going to talk about this retreat I was recently on in the Dominican Republic, where I was involved in a beautiful psilocybin ceremony. I did mushrooms. And I can't wait to tell you all about it. It was really a great experience. But of course, you want to know all of the safety around that subject, the different type of medicines that are out there, who is providing you these medicines. Are you in a safe place? Is your body sound enough to take these different medicines? It's very important to know. And Karen and I are going to dive into all of that. And I can't wait to talk about it. We could talk about it forever. Now, I met Karen on retreat. You've heard me talk about her before, many, many, many years ago. And since then, we have traveled to different places together. And she's my go-to person if I ever want to talk out anything. So you can check her out on the accidentalseeker.com. And with no further ado, please welcome in my beautiful friend, Karen Talavera. Welcome, Karen Talavera, the accidental seeker, to Bucket List Retreats, the podcast.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I'm delighted to be here. Super excited about our topic today. And it's been almost 20 years. I can't believe it. I was reflecting on that.
And we look exactly the same.
Of course, no, even better.
Yeah, way better.
Fine wine. Fine wine
And we
going
have-
on here.
And we have that much more to talk about.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, recently I went to a retreat in the Dominican Republic and I went through a psilocybin, or a mushroom, if you will, ceremony. And it was delightful for me. I had some really beautiful situations where I was so worried about doing any of those things because everyone says that you'll face your demons. And I'm like, yikes, I've already dealt with my demons. I don't want to face my demons. But I did have an opportunity to look at them from a really beautiful and loving light from that way, and that just really appealed to me in the end. It came away with something that I can think about often, and I just had you come and visit. You were driving through the area, and I'd like
Uh-huh.
stop for a night, and we got to talking about the subject, and I said, please come on the podcast so you can share your knowledge and your experience. Uh, with everyone about this topic because it's a big topic right now, don't you find?
Oh my gosh. Yes, and I can't believe it's been a little over a decade that psychedelics found me, as I like to say. And I think that the right healing modality does find us, especially when we really need it. So,
The
looking
different
back,
type.
yeah. Yeah, not even just psychedelics, but looking back on this last 10 years, it's been kind of a wild ride. It's been a good ride. I've learned a lot, and I've seen the arc of how psychedelics have gone from sort of just barely breaking into mainstream consciousness, kind of being either a legacy topic from the late 60s and 70s, when they first kind of came into the public scene, to having a little bit of a resurgence or being like a niche topic of people going to retreats in South America, and that was the only way to experience anything. Anyway, the arc from all of that to
Right.
really mainstream acceptance and even legalization, which I think is fantastic, and very surprising to me given in the US, our political climate over the last decade too.
Right.
Which means that they have a consciousness. Psychedelics and these healing plants, I think, have a consciousness of their own and are finally getting, their day in the sun. I hope that's not a too cheesy of an analogy.
Right. No, and could you talk on that, to that end about them being medicinals, just changing the narrative, to drugs to
Mhm.
medicinals?
Yeah. I'll just put this on the radar for people because I did not know that this particular event existed until about 2.5 years ago when I started hearing about a big convention that was being held in Denver called Psychedelic Science. And that was first I'd heard of it, so I attended in 2023. It was held again in Denver this last year, 2025. I didn't go, but it does have kind of a longer backstory, and it's put on by a lot of organizations that literally, like since the early days of psychedelics in the 60s and 70s, have been doing the research and trying to get some of them, taken off of or declassified from Schedule 1, because the unfortunate reality is that back in the 1950s, there was a lot of great research on LSD, on psilocybin, maybe a little bit on mescaline, and then the substances became party drugs and lost some credibility. And the research was really promising early on, but because there was no regulation and it was more conservative times, everything was kind of clamped down and shut down. And a lot of these substances were classified as highly dangerous. I personally think because there was enough science that people knew they would be highly effective, and there was fear about letting them out in the mainstream or, making them sort of approved treatment methods. And if we think back to that time, it was also really the rapid growth of big pharma. And there's competition there,
Right.
so it has taken 50, 60 years for some of the organizations that were on the research side of psychedelics from the beginning to do that much more, to do that many more studies, to do that much more research, to get approval. Like Johns Hopkins University, right, has a massive psychedelic department, research department,
Mhm.
in order for us to get over this hump that who knows if times had been different, maybe we would have been there in the 70s or 80s. but at least we're there today. We have more
Mhm.
science than ever. We have better science than ever. We have more data than ever that these substances really are effective and healing for so many people.
I would have to say that myself, I've been for 50 or 60 years
Yeah.
researching on ways to uh, combat my inner feelings that I didn't feel were right, maybe, or just different aspects about myself that, I could meditate them away, or I could walk in nature or keep busy at work, all of these things. But after this ceremony that we had where I just felt this loving presence towards me, towards everything I do, towards the happy, towards the sad. It made the happy happier. It made the sad dealable. I was able to deal with it and even
Mhm.
walk away from the experience still holding on to that. So it's been a really lasting experience and I just really love it. And I loved how they presented it as a medicinal. This is something that we honor. This is something we respect. And you're going to feel why. And that's exactly how it made me feel.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I remember, growing up in the 80s, like high school, college years. And my only experience with psychedelics, or the only awareness of them at all, was in the context of partying,
Yeah.
recreational use.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and I wasn't really drawn to them back then. I had a few very light experiences, I would say. Um, Marijuana was certainly around and
Yeah.
had been already for a while. It wasn't so much like it wasn't as popular with Gen X,
No.
which we are as previous generations, and it was never my thing anyway.
No.
But I remember trying, some psilocybin mushrooms back in the
Yes.
80s. And what they do is they amplify sensory experiences. They amplify our senses.
Hmm.
They amplify awareness. They amplify the ability to go into the subconscious. And then it was like, 35 years or 25 years later, I don't know, my math was off.
I hear you.
That they found me, like I said, at a time where I was going through a lot of life change, all at once and really dysregulated. And like that's a word I want to put into this conversation is the ability to self-regulate. And when we can self-regulate, we're able to find peace and in balance. And we're not, in that sympathetic fight, flight, freeze mode where our nervous system is sort of freaking out. When we're dysregulated, it could get it's very difficult to get back to some kind of stasis. And that's when we might be compulsive, addictive, acting out, a victim to our feelings, taking risks that we wouldn't normally take, or anxious or depressed. And
Right.
that, psychedelic research has been done on in all of those areas and shown to be a very effective tool for, rewiring the brain to a point of being able to understand what is causing us to have those unregulated behaviors because it's our body, it's our being just trying to cope at the
Right.
end of the, you know,
Yes. And there's such great ways to handle those situations when you're spiraling down or hopefully you get to a place where you don't spiral anymore or it's just so nice to have a natural tool in your back pocket that you can use.
mhm,
And it's so wonderful that these days you have so much information about it. You can deep dive into this as much as you want to if you really want to research it, which most people don't do with their pharmaceuticals that they get from their doctor. They just start taking it anyways. But you start mentioning psychedelics, microdosing to some people, and they just forget
Mhm.
about it. I'm not looking into this at all. But let me just say, like you just mentioned, the research is out there, and that's the wonderful thing. I did a little bit in high school too. Mushrooms were kind of a big thing. They came around for a while,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
we did it a couple of times that I remember, but it was just like any party. It wasn't like anything philosophical, or I didn't feel you're right. It amplified the situation. I lived in Alaska. We were watching the Northern Lights, and it was pretty
Super trippy.
intense. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be that way. Of course, I
Uh-uh.
think it's great if it's a joyful situation for someone, but, if I just like to say, if it's calling to you, like, if you're hearing information, I always have this thing, like, if I hear something repeated 3 times in a short amount of time, it seems like it's something
Mhm.
I need to pay attention to. And so
Yep.
I just say if it's something that keeps popping up in your peripheral, if you are, having situations that you don't understand, look into it and see what you think. Now, I've written down some questions that I
Mm.
ran by Karen that I can ask
Uh-huh.
her. So we're going to go through those questions and make sure that we kind of answer everyone's questions in a roundabout way about this topic. So, your personal journey, who are you and what was happening in your life when psychedelics as medicinals first came into your radar, Karen?
Well, I chose the moniker The Accidental Seeker because over 20 years ago, spirituality came into my field in a very unexpected way. I was not looking for any of this. So, as I mentioned earlier, psychedelics found me, but before psychedelics found me, meditation found
Mm,
me. And really a desire and a curiosity to ask the big questions and to move outside my very conventional, traditional upbringing. So yeah, who am I? I mean, on the surface, I could say, I'm a girl that grew up in the Midwest and I had kind of like the American dream life, followed the program, yeah, had a good family of origin, a stable household, went to Catholic school, went to college, like did all the things you're supposed to do in the supposed order. Got married, got a career going, had a daughter, and really wasn't that fulfilled or happy by any of it. And I mean, I shouldn't laugh because it wasn't funny at the time, but um I had some unconventional experiences here and there, and that part of me just really wanted to come alive. Like I married a man from another country. I had some great experience traveling internationally, getting outside the American mindset, seeing other cultures, other ways of life. Then, started a journey of self-employment about 25 years ago. So again, breaking with convention, and that theme started to accelerate. So, I joined a meditation group that met a couple times a week, and that I have to say, and I want to give a lot of credit to meditation because you brought up something, 3 points in right before you asked me this first question that I don't want to lose, and I want us to come back to. The idea of tools was one. And yes, psychedelics are a tool. Meditation is a tool or modality, if we want to call it that. Breath work is a tool.
mhm.
Therapy is a tool. They all have their place in a healing process, and not every tool is for everyone. And no one of these modalities is a magic bullet, a silver bullet, right? But
No.
they can work in concert in many cases and be very effective at different times. So, but back to my journey, meditation really started to kind of like crack things open, open the doors, open the windows to asking deeper questions, really wanting to understand what is it that I believe? what's my ideology of life and this existence? Who am I? Why do I have these patterns, these, various traits? Or why am I not happy by and fulfilled by all these things that culture and society tells us are supposed to
Great
make us happy,
questions. Love your
you
questions.
know?
Yes.
So fast forward 10 years from starting to meditate and the house, begins to really crumble. I'm getting divorced and leaving a 25-year marriage. Daughter's going off to college. I've, only one. So here I am in my late 40s back then as an empty nester living alone for the first time since basically growing up and having to look inward and having to face this stuff. And sure enough, I just happened to meet a woman who was tapped into a big psychedelic community where I lived in South Florida. And I already had enough intellectual knowledge from all my spiritual deep diving and reading and whatnot to know what, for example, ayahuasca was, to know about some of the indigenous traditional lineages using these sacred medicines and sacred plants that come from other countries. But like I said earlier, at the time, that kind of information was just kind of breaking into the mainstream. Like I remember there was this one, a lot of people remember Anthony Bourdain.
Yes.
His show, No Reservations, I think, was the first one. And he would go and immerse himself, in these different countries and cultures. And usually it was all came back to food. But I think it was like back in 2012, 13, he did a show where he was down in Peru or Brazil and did ayahuasca. So it was seeping into the collective consciousness, but it was barely there. And yet, it found me and I knew what it was. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. This is right here in my own backyard where I live. Oh, I gotta check this out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I needed it. So that's the short version of, a very
Love it.
long, kind of gradual backstory that I feel like I was destined um to come to psychedelics.
And did you
Yeah.
start to find answers to all of those questions?
I didn't have like burning questions at the time, but I was pretty much a mess, I'll just say. Um, and I had a lot of patterns going on. So subsequent, to 2015, then I did what I would call like the academic work. Then I did the schoolwork
Mm.
of really reading and accumulating a lot of intellectual knowledge to understand what all of this stuff was and went into therapy, during the period I was getting divorced. But before that, in my first experience with a version of ayahuasca, it's like a chemical analog to the indigenous version that's used, in South America. I had intentions to get clear on what the issues were in romantic relationships in my life, and to get clarity, to get insight, and to get healing specifically. And I joined a ceremony. I came in with that intention. And you touched on something else. You touched on the fact that there's such a long history of psychedelics for recreational use. Now, there's value in that. We could come back to that. That's not bad. But what's more in the mainstream now is psychedelics as medicine, right? As a healing tool and for ceremonial use. And I had not had any experience with psychedelics in that context
Yeah.
until a little over 10 years ago. So I did go to my first ceremony and it was very structured. It was monitored, there was a entire intake questionnaire the participants had to take to disclose any medical issues. There were safety precautions in place. And I know we're going to get around to this too when we talk about psychedelic retreats.
Yes.
But, it was not like, oh, you just hear about it on
Right.
Thursday and show up at somebody's house on Saturday. This
No.
was, an orchestrated event.
Yes. Yes.
And with preparation and guidance given to the participants to the point where, yeah, I came I was encouraged to set an intention and come ready with that. And I did.
Right.
Um,
And many ceremonies request that you do all kinds of things, not eat meat for 2 weeks, not drink for 2 weeks, don't have sex for 2 weeks. I've
mhm.
heard this for San Pedro, I've heard this for ayahuasca. You just want your body to be as clean as possible to accept the sacred medicine. So it's not something that, you willy-nilly just, "Oh, okay, I'm going to an ayahuasca ceremony," or they certainly don't recommend that.
Now that, in this past decade, with all the learning I've done, experience on my own, in groups, with myself, and a certification, I can't stress enough, and I will put a stake in the ground and say to anyone contemplating psychedelic use, please approach it with intention, with respect, and take it seriously. Again, not that there isn't value recreationally as well if you've educated yourself. If you
Right.
want to go to, a huge music fest and do some MDMA or do a light dose of shrooms, or you want to go to the beach and chill out, and do a light dose of shrooms and you're with your friends, fantastic, you know?
Yes, if you're in a safe situation and
Yeah.
you know how you're handling it. Even when I talk to people who are wanting how to handle a long haul flight, and you'll see a lot of times people tell them to take different sleeping medication. I'm like, only if you know how your body reacts to that medication.
Right.
Don't
Right.
just for the first time on an airplane of all places decide you're going to pop an Ambien and, be
Right. And then
surprised when
you're
you see yourself on the nightly news.
be with people you trust, right? Set.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There's
Yes,
something
and
in psychedelic practice known as set and setting.
mm,
And set refers to mindset, mental, emotional, psychological preparation, right? Do I know what I'm walking into? Do I understand what's going to happen? What's my mindset? What state am I in? Am I highly dysregulated? Am I um in fear? Did something just happen the day before? Like maybe somebody's contemplating coming to a psychedelic use or ceremony and they've been educated, they've been prepared, but they have a traumatic event happen the day before or a work emergency. It doesn't even have to be trauma, right? Um, well, maybe then all of a sudden you're not in the right mindset for this. And the setting. The setting is the physical location, right? Where are you? What resources are available? Who are the people hosting? Do you know them? Do you trust people? Do you
exactly.
have somebody there with you? Yeah, just like you were saying, you don't experiment
Yes.
on the airplane when it's in flight. Let's go back for a second to something you said. What if it is your first time? And you don't know how your body's going to react, right? What do you do? Because I remember my first time with ayahuasca I was very afraid. I would say I had healthy fear,
Mhm.
fear of the unknown, healthy hesitation, trepidation. I felt like I was properly prepared, but at some point, you have to make the leap. So I don't know if you want to share if you felt anything before your recent retreat in that.
Um, yeah, I was first of all, made sure that I was in a very safe location, that the people that were administering were completely knowledgeable, they had the mushrooms were in a pill form, and I quizzed all about that. And so it
Mhm.
was the safety that was my first concern. And I just wanted to make sure that, I was taking the right things because this was out of the country. And
Yeah.
I have high blood pressure, and so when they asked me about all of those things, you were talking about filling out a form, I had to fill out a form, they knew really everything about my physicality and, took all of that into how the dosing of how much I was getting. And we used two different types of medicines, and all of that was wiped away for me. Like, okay, I've got all of this down. I know who these people are. They are in connection with the local,
Right.
hospital or whatever if I have any type of a problem. Because I'm 62 years old, doing this for, medicinally for the first time. I did it as a kid. Don't do that. But so it was all of those things. But as far as set, where I was coming from, that is, I did come to it fearful uh, of all those things I was talking about, like, trying to identify traits in myself. That's why I came to it with a fearful mindset, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
So luckily, I was in a very loving place with really lovely people around me. And that is how the whole shift of the ceremony went. And so I was able to like go, I'd look at a situation and go, I, you
And
know, I,
it's huge. It's
it's,
everything, you
yes,
know?
it was just so nice to be able to look at it lovingly and say, "Yeah, that happened. Yes, this is a situation, um, that I wish hadn't happened or whatever, but it
Mhm.
is part of my collective," and that's kind of what I did.
It's part of your history.
Yeah,
There's enough knowledge in the mainstream now that people are out there on Reddit or anywhere on the internet, TikTok and everything, talking about their experiences. And some psychedelic experiences, I want to be very careful with labels here because we could say
yeah,
good, bad, right?
yeah,
Positive, negative. Let's go even more refined. Some are um, difficult and some are euphoric. And there's a whole spectrum in between. Now, there's a difference between a difficult psychedelic experience that is still a healthy, healing experience and when something really goes wrong, like a medical emergency,
uh,
right? Or a truly bad, unsafe experience. But a lot of that fear is the fear of not knowing what's going to come up because, again, the average citizen out there, the layperson, can read about what's possible and wonder, well, what's deep down in my psyche or my
right,
past? What have I suppressed or repressed? What if it comes up? Oh my gosh, what am I, is it going to be terrible? Is it going to be wonderful? How's it going to be? How is it going to come up? Am I going to be puking for 5 hours?
yeah,
Lots of fear. Yeah, I hear a lot of hesitation and I don't know if fear is the right word, but reluctance to work with certain plant medicines. It can be hard on the digestive system and cause a lot of purging. And there's no way to know ahead of time if that's going to happen to you. And having been there myself, I will say it's not like the worst physical experience in the world. I've had food poisoning or flu that was much worse than anything that happened in a psychedelic ceremony. But often when we're physically purging as a result of using a plant medicine, it's not just biological and physical, it really is energetic. We really are releasing a lot of what's been held in the body, whether it's trauma or emotion. It can get embedded in the muscles and cells
so
and can come out as, purging experience. I've had other ceremonies I've done where it's been completely euphoric, beautiful, harmonious. You're like in another almost dreamlike dimension. But one isn't right or wrong. The most important takeaway from this is that difficult doesn't necessarily mean bad or unsafe. Recognizing what is a problem, what is really an emergency, and what is an unsafe situation is what's important for people that are thinking about approaching this for the first time. I will say, um, this is not back to psychedelics being a tool. It's not a tool for everyone.
No.
You need to know your medical history. Hopefully you know your medical history, right? But if you have a history of certain psychiatric disorders, mental health issues, bipolar, schizophrenia, I would not go to psychedelics. I cannot recommend psychedelics to people with those backgrounds. If you're on certain medications that may interact, SSRIs, this is probably not the best tool for you. And
No,
there are
and
other very good effective tools.
right. And that's one of the things Karen and I wanted to be sure that we talked about during this podcast is that we aren't the experts. So it is something, if you have any of those situations, you don't want to just jump into this, and definitely talk to your doctor about it. Were you able to talk to your therapist, if you don't mind me asking, about doing ayahuasca?
I found my therapist after my first experiences with ayahuasca. As a result of getting my intention met and having some attachment and relationship patterns, illuminated for me, then I decided I'm going to do the work on those things. And I'm going to do that work in therapy.
Yes.
And I'm going to do some program work, some group work, some breath work, which is another fantastic
It
healing
is.
modality that is the second most potent, I would say, healing modality to psychedelics that I have experience with. Something we were touching on earlier, if I could sort of sum up, the difference between things like meditation therapy, breath work, psychedelics is I said psychedelics amplify. They're really kind of like the express lane and the heavy artillery, if you will. I feel like that's kind of almost too violent a term. I don't want to scare people again, but they are perhaps the most direct path into the depths of the psyche. It's faster and more direct than other modalities or pathways, but that can also mean it's jarring. And again, without proper pre-preparation and post-integration, can leave people with revelations that they can't process.
Yeah.
And that is my wheelhouse, and what I do in accidentalseeker.com is work with people who want to explore psychedelics or have already been using psychedelics to help them integrate, um, and to help them prepare beforehand, integrate after, and coach them on, you know, how to fully heal from
Yes,
whatever
and
came up.
that's fantastic because now I know that that's what I'm wanting. I'm totally ready to deep dive where I was afraid before, where I'm not afraid now. I understand now how you sought out therapy after getting into this, where now I have the clarity of the questions that I'm ready to explore. So that is perfect.
You had a question for me of why you think some people feel called to explore psychedelics.
Yes.
And, we've talked about some of our experiences. So for a lot of people, psychedelics are this last resort because they know they have issues, right? They're heavily addicted to a substance or a behavior. They have, horrible anxiety, depression. They may be aware or suspect that they have trauma. The trauma may have surfaced or not, and they've tried almost everything else. They've tried the conventional routes. They've tried therapy. They may have tried psychiatric medication, and nothing is working. Now, there's the flip side of that too. There's sort of the seeker, the curious, or it finds you, which is more my path.
Mhm.
But it nonetheless does its job. It, again, cuts to the quick,
Yeah.
illuminates, shines the light on the darkness, whatever word you want to use.
I
And
love
then
how
you
you said
realize,
I love you how you said it's an expressway because it really is. It finally gets
yeah,
you on that path that of answers that you have been seeking your whole entire life, if I do dare say that after one experience. It's just
It
got me
can.
to a place where I am at peace with going down that path.
Well, it shines a light in the dark recesses or the blind spots that you can't get to on your own and that often therapy didn't get to. So again, if like the therapy and everything else came first, then it doesn't work. That's what leads a lot of people to psychedelics and they get their breakthrough. They might still need more therapy after. Okay, let's not throw let's not throw the
Right.
baby out with the bathwater here.
Absolutely not.
Now they may or may not have come in with big questions or lifelong struggles, but what needs to be illuminated for their highest good, ultimately for healing and healthy functioning, will get the light shown on it. The question is then afterwards, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to do anything, right? If you weren't the
Right.
one coming to psychedelics intentionally and perhaps even out of desperation, but you came to it nonetheless, or they found you and showed you something. Some people unfortunately do the spiritual bypass. And yeah, I'll speak to that for a second.
Yeah, what is
It
that?
is it's very possible. I've seen people do this in the community. I was introduced to psychedelics ceremonially through in Florida. There were people that were coming to a ceremony every other weekend and essentially just signing up for like they were what we call psychonauts, like an astronaut,
Yeah.
but they're just psychedelic explorers. And they didn't come in with a specific intention. And they're like, I'm just here to see what could be shown to me. I'm
Sure.
just here for whatever experience I get. And they they're there just for the phenomenon of it, which again, I don't think really respects the healing power of this,
Mm-hmm.
but furthermore allows people to just get caught up literally in the psychoactive experience, the trippy experience and all the
Right.
sensory stuff, and just sort of steer away from, oh, I don't really want to look over there. Oh, there's some memory surfacing, but no, I'm going to go look over here at these pretty lights instead. And then if they're back a week or 2 weeks later, they haven't had time to integrate a damn thing.
No.
There's no way they're doing any real work.
Yeah.
That's the spiritual bypass.
Oh, okay. I see. And
Mhm.
I can see how they would get drawn into that. I mean, it was a beautiful experience for me, and I do,
Mhm.
hope to, like I said, deep dive further. But I really loved the intention, or I guess I really didn't set an intention other than I was just in a fear state, and
Mhm.
it went straight to that fear state and talked to me about it and had me deal with it. So I guess that was an intention of its own. So I would hope that, people would. I'm sure that most people do find a lot of answers and continue to seek, but I can understand where you get those people.
And their friends were the ones
Yeah.
that connected them in, or their group of friends keeps going
Yes.
back. Now, these ceremonies are not inexpensive in
No.
most parts of the country, certainly in the world if you're traveling abroad like you did or contemplating a retreat. But even if it's a local center, we're probably talking $300 to $500 for an evening ceremony, which is usually going to require that people, at least for ayahuasca or DMT, the active
Mhm.
ingredient, it's going to require that they stay overnight, um, go through some sort of integration the next day, or at least a little group sharing. Yeah,
That's right.
not cheap.
No, it's not cheap.
I want to say how happy I am to hear you give voice to how safe you felt in the retreat and in the setting that you were in. And that is a testament to coming in as an educated consumer, finding the right retreat center, interview them, make sure that they're asking you about you and your, again, your health background, your medical background, But here's the other thing. In general, whether it's psilocybin, whether it's ayahuasca, it could even be there's another one called ibogaine that a lot of people don't know about. It's gaining popularity. It's from Africa. Whatever the substance, if it's in a ceremonial retreat setting, and you know with your pre-ceremony, rational mind, intellectually you're safe.
Yes.
Psychedelics, when you're in the experience, give you this sort of witness perspective. They allow the ego to step aside and y- you're more identified with your essence, or like I would call it the witness, where you could look at, literally kind of see in your mind um, a difficult past experience. I have a family member who did a ceremony. Her father had died suddenly and traumatically when she was in her early 30s,
Mm.
um, in her home. And it was literally right after she had had a baby. I mean, it was trauma with a capital
Wow.
T, right? Um, she didn't have a lot of time after to deal with it because she had just given birth to her first child. She was facing a move, the loss of a parent, the care of the surviving parent. And it was like a year and a half or so after that she did a ceremony and was able to sort of from a healthy, safe place, like in the psyche, look back and experience that and sort of witness it as an objective, non-emotional observer. And at that point was able to finally let go, experience the grief, get through the grief, and come out the other side with having released it.
That is
So,
absolutely huge. It's
yeah,
probably
but
something that she carried for a long time before she was able to deal with that properly.
a couple of years,
Yeah.
I thank God it wasn't longer because
Yeah,
she had probably stuck grief, as it's called.
sure.
And psychedelics can put you in this place where it's not like you're traumatically reliving what happened. You're not re-experiencing and re-traumatizing yourself. You are your your psyche, the essence of who you are, we could call it the spiritual self, as, a witness looking at that human experience you had and able to finally see it and therefore, process it and hopefully release and move past.
Exactly. That's a really great example of why somebody might want to look into this. You have a
Uh-huh.
situation that you keep reliving in your head or you just can't seem to get past, and maybe this is an option for you.
I want to mention a few resources for your
Yes.
listeners, especially when it comes to retreats. There's a great content and coaching company called The Third Wave, and they should be at thethirdwave.com or Google them because they do have a list of vetted and recommended retreat centers
Oh, okay.
all over the world for psychedelic use. They also have coaching certification programs, great podcasts, tons of educational content. A colleague of mine here in Colorado, where I live, is also the founder of Psychedelics Today, which is, I think, the longest running podcast on psychedelics, another content creator, and professional education and certification.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I will put all of
Yeah.
that in the show notes as well. So be sure to check there if you want to just click and go. And of course, I appreciate you so much taking the time to come and talk to us about your experience in psychedelics and how that related to your life. And
I'll close on one note and just say, after those first experiences, which were a couple months apart in 2015, so about a decade ago, what was eliminated for me and the issues that showed up, and again, I'd just been divorced, so a lot about relationships, right? I spent 4 to 5 years working on that stuff. Okay. Now, I'm the kind of person, I'm a really good student. Like,
yes, yes.
I don't go halfway on stuff. I want to get the A in class. I want to master a subject. But
Yeah.
I wasn't just driven by that. Like, I really wanted to heal this stuff. I didn't
Yeah.
want to continue to live with, the patterns and the issues. So, yeah, I did the work, and I kind of knew when it was coming to an end. And, it's like you don't want to be in therapy forever. The goal is to graduate. The goal of exploring
So true.
anything that is a healing modality is to heal, not to stay sick forever and have to have it be a crutch for the rest of your life. You know.
Love that. Yes.
So, but
That's such a beautiful thing.
it could take, maybe you're integrating something after a psychedelic ceremony or healing. And psilocybin, I'm glad you did psilocybin. I mean, I feel like it's very gentle
Mhm.
and very loving as a medicine. But maybe you come away from your experience like my family member did, finally clear, or releasing something. Maybe you need 3 months for integration. Maybe you need 3 years. Like, there is no prescribed timeline here. Be open to what you need and give yourself what you need after you work with psychedelics.
Yes, and I think it's so exciting that you see a window, a sliver of hope, place you can go to afterwards. So that's the exciting part that I like to share with everyone. And I love those resources that you gave because it sounds like you can just easily look into all of the options that are out there. And locally, if you check on places locally, I'm sure they have websites so you can just talk to people. And after
Yeah.
hearing our conversation, know some of the questions to ask, some of the things that you need to know that's going to calm you down about going and doing some of these things. So that's great.
And as far as retreats abroad with that bigger price tag, couple $1,000 often, maybe plus travel, really do your homework on
Yes.
those. And as long as you qualify, again, without, medical exclusions or whatnot, they're going to
Right.
recommend preparation, especially if it is ayahuasca. Don't
Yes.
don't shortchange yourself. Get your money's worth. Follow
Exactly.
the recommendations, do the preparation, so you don't drink alcohol, caffeine, or have sex or eat crappy food for 2 weeks.
Be
It's not going to kill you. Like, you're going to have a better
No.
experience
Right.
for having given that to yourself and really abiding by that. It's there for a reason, and a lot of the websites will go into much more detail than we have time for as to why that's
Right.
important.
Yes, I agree with that completely. I think it's really important. They're asking you not to do these things for a reason. It's going to help you out in the long run. Anything else?
No, I would just say, I'm happy to, give people an exploratory, short free consult if they
Awesome.
think they might want coaching in this area. And if so, there's more information on my website. Please reach out. Kelly will put my contact info and the link in the show notes.
Thank you so much for that. That is such a great offer, Karen. That's uh, a really great place to know that, hey, I can start my conversation right here. So thank you.
My pleasure.
And thank you again for joining me today. I'm so excited to start the discussion on the podcast. I'm looking forward to having more discussion about that. So in the future, I might be knocking on your door again. But everyone, check out the accidentalseeker.com. Of course, we'll put the link in the show notes.
Mhm.
Thank you again. And we will talk to you again soon, I'm sure.
You're so welcome. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Bye bye. If you enjoyed the show today and liked our conversation, please hit that like button on YouTube. It really helps the algorithm. And to everyone who has done that to date, thank you so much. It just fills my heart with joy. It lets me know that we've reached a subject here that you are interested in. And of course, if you're listening on Spotify, I hope we have done something constructive today. I always, as you know, love to listen to podcasts while I'm doing the laundry or cleaning the bathroom or doing the dishes. Anything that is repetitive that I can do while I'm listening is my favorite thing to do, unless, of course, I want to grab a note. So all of the notes that you need to to get from this podcast are linked in the show notes, just so you don't have to do that. Stay on your walk. Keep doing what you're doing. Get done what you have to get done today while listening. That is what I hope for most of you while you're listening to the podcast. Have a beautiful rest of your day, everyone. Keep retreating, keep exploring, and we'll see you on the next adventure. Bye-bye.